Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari and Gopi Janavallabha Girivardhari Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yashodanandana Bhajana Ranjana Yamuna Tiravanachari Sorry Yamuna Tiravanachari Time out. Oh. I don't know if I have a voice tonight. No, it wasn't a gartle. All right. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama Rama Hare Hare Jaya Vishnupada Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Parivajikacharya Ashtotar Shri Srimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavinda Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktavinda Ki Jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Okay. On this 6th day of May, 2026 in San Diego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are in chapter 2, contents of the Gita summarized. And I think we're on page 122 with text 55? Yes, 55. Okay, I thought so. right, I better record that. On this 6th day of May, 2026 in San Diego, reading Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is, translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. Chapter 2, contents of the Gita summarized, text number 55, at the top of page 122. Sri Bhagavan Vacha Prajahati Yada Kaman Sarvan Partha Manogatan Atmani Evatmana Tushtaha Sita Pragyas Tadochite. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Prajahati Yada Kaman Sarvan Partha Manogatan Atmanevatmana Tushta Tita Pragyas Tadochite. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Prajahati Yada Kaman Sarvan Partha Manogatan Atmanevatmana Tushta Stita Pragyas Tadochite. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Prajahati Yada Kaman Sarvan Partha Manogatan Atmanevatmana Tushta Chitta Pragyas Tadochite. Tapas. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Prajahati Yada Kaman Sarvan Partha Manogatan Atmanevatmana Tushta Stita Pragyas Tadochite. Bhakti Jeff. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Prajahati Yada Kaman Sarvan Partha Manogatan Atmanyevatmana Tushta Chitta Pragyas Tadochite. Shri Bhagavan Vacha Prajahati Yada Kaman Sarvan Partha Manogatan Atmanevatmana Tushta Chitta Pragyas Tadochite. 3. Who's first? What is it? Prem Gopal, you there?
Hi Krishna.
Go for it.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Prajahati Yada Kaman
Prajahati Yada Kaman
Sarvan Partha Manogatan
Sarvan Partha Manogatan
Atmanyevatmana Tushta
Atmanevatmana Tushta
Stita Pragnas Tadochate.
Stita Pragyas Tadochite. Bhakti Chad.
Hare Krishna, I'll go last.
Okay.
No worries.
Who's next?
Vanessa.
Okay.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Prajahati Yada Kaman
Prajahati Yada Kaman
Sarvan Partha Manogatan
Sarvan Partha Manogatan
Atmanevatmana Tushta
Atmanevatmana Tushta
Stita Pragnas Tadochate.
Stita Pragyas Tadochite.
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Shri Bhagavan Vacha
Prajahati Yada Kaman
Prajahati Yada Kaman
Sarvam Partha Manogatan
Sarvan Partha Manogatan
Atmanyevatmana Tushta
Atmanyevatmana Tushta
Stita pragyastadocite.
Chitta pragyastadochite. Word by word. Sri Bhagavan Vacha, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, said, Prajahati gives up, yada, when, kaman, desires for sense gratification, sarvan, of all varieties, Partha, O son of Pritha, manach gatan, of mental concoction, atmani, in the pure state of the soul, eva, certainly, atmana, by the purified mind, tushtaha, satisfied, stita pragyaha, transcendentally situated. Tada, at that time, uchite, is said. Translation: the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O Partha, when a man gives up all varieties of desire for sense gratification, which arise from mental concoction, and when his mind, thus purified, finds satisfaction in the self alone, then he is said to be in pure transcendental consciousness. So Arjuna asked a question in the previous verse, O Krishna, what are the symptoms of one whose consciousness is thus merged in transcendence? How does he speak? What is his language? How does he sit? And how does he walk? And so in these and the several future next verses, Krishna is going to go through and answer all those questions. Purport 255. The Bhagavatam affirms that any person who is fully in Krishna consciousness or devotional service to the Lord, has all the good qualities of the great sages, whereas a person who is not so transcendently situated has no good qualifications, because he is sure to be taking refuge in his own mental concoctions. Consequently, it is rightly said herein that one has to give up all kinds of sense desire manufactured by mental concoction. Artificially, such sense desires cannot be stopped, but if one is engaged in Krishna consciousness, then automatically sense desires subside without extraneous efforts. Therefore, one has to engage himself in Krishna consciousness without hesitation, for this devotional service will instantly help one onto the platform of transcendental consciousness. Let's take a book, page 122. Okay. The highly developed soul always remains satisfied in himself by realizing himself as the eternal servitor of the Supreme Lord. Such a transcendentally situated person has no sense desires resulting from petty materialism. Rather, he remains always happy in his natural position of eternally serving the Supreme Lord. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnanandana Shalakaya Chokshurun Militam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkest of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisances unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. Okay. So, Krishna is describing here what he described in text 53, when your mind is no longer disturbed by flowery language of the Vedas and when it remains fixed in the trance of self-realization, then you will have attained the divine consciousness. So, in the purport here, Prabhupada quotes a verse from the Bhagavatam. He doesn't give the Sanskrit, but it's a famous verse. Yas yasti bhakti bhagavat akinchana sarvarganas tatta samasate sura harava bhaktas kuto mahadgana marodate nasati dhavato bahi. So when a pure devotee who is a kinchana describes one who is free from all material desires or possessiveness. Yas yasti bhakti bhagavat sarvarganas tatta samasate sura. Then he develops all good qualities, that belong to the demigods or the pure devotees, the suras. Harava bhaktasa, but how can one who is not a devotee, abhaktasa, kuto mahadgana, how can they have any good qualities? Because mano ratena sati dhavato bahi. And that's a very graphic metaphor that he gives in the last line. The mind is running out on the chariot of the mind, mano rata. Asati dhavato, but he's running after the asat, these temporary things that seem to be enjoyable. So in the material state, we all have this chariot of the mind that we're running on. You know, even you know, it reminds me of a kid in the second grade, third grade. He's looking out the window instead of paying attention to the class, and says, you know, the teacher will say. stop running. Keep your mind from running out. They didn't say chariot of the mind, but the equivalent of that, because it's like that. What is it? The train of thought. You have a train of thought. You have one thing after another. You're on this train, and you're going in some direction, but you're not going to Krishna. It's a material train that you're on. So that mind, is, as in any yoga process, Bhakti Yoga also centers on controlling the mind and fixing it on Krishna, and then in this way changing your whole orientation about what you want to do and what you don't want to do. Now, oftentimes, at the beginning especially, a lot of things that you want to do, you have to stop doing. That's part of the surrendering process. So the way to do that is to absorb the mind in service to Krishna, especially in chanting the holy name. And that, the science, Prabhupada always says it's a science. It's just some practice that someone thought up. And the science is that the mind is filled with all kinds of thoughts and memories, desires. There's attraction and there's also repulsion. What does it say? How's that verse go? I forget again. But that's the reverse side of attractions. Just like there's so many things we want to do, but then there's things that we suffered from we don't want to do again. So they plant desire seeds when you enjoy something, and also aversion seeds when there's some suffering. And that stays in your mind. If the mind isn't purified, that will be deeply inside, and then when you'll take birth again, and the mind will be the template for what kind of birth you take. You'll try to enjoy the same things in the next life. You won't remember it, but there's desire seeds there. So the whole process of Krishna is one of purification. Purification of one's desires, which reside in the mind. And the great tool we have, the essential tool we have that the animals don't have, lower beings, is the higher intelligence, where we can actually think of these things. This is why the intelligence is going to point the attention in a certain place that is the best place. Just like even in a mundane situation where you have a kid, he's in 7th grade, and his parents really want him to do the homework, or maybe he's in 11th grade, or in high school he really get a lot of homework. And the kid, he really wants to watch the football game on his phone or whatever, But the mother said, no, you have to do your homework. You have to put your attention on the homework, because if you don't get a good grade, you won't get into a good school, and you'll be a failure. And so it's an austerity, but it boils down to that old thing of Shreyas and Preyas. This is a nice duality. It's very illustrative. Preyas is immediate pleasure. It's like a little baby, or a child who really hasn't been trained at all. Whatever, is giving him pleasure at the time, he'll want to keep doing without, coming home and washing the dishes for his mother, or whatever it is, or doing his homework, right? So, but we have to become more mature to that and understand what is our ultimate good. Remember Arjun's turn, the central verse in 2.7. Karpanya dosho apahatat svabhava prichami tvam dharma sammuda chetat. Yak shreyaksyan nishtitam bruhitan me shishistehim shadiman tvam papannam. So he's saying, I've been overwhelmed by this miserly weakness, he says, because he's a Kshatriya, but he doesn't want to fight, so that's disgraceful for a real Kshatriya. Karpanya dosha, this is a real fault in my character now, he's recognized. Upahata svabhava, it has taken away my ability to actually follow my dharma. Upahata svabhava, my own nature, as a Kshatriya. So I'm asking you now, Prichami Tvam, I'm questioning, Dharma Samudacheta, please instruct this person who is bewildered about the right thing to do, what real Dharma is. Because he was arguing on the basis of Dharma. He was saying that if I fight this battle, then I'll be responsible for so many people getting killed, including my beloved grandfather and teacher. And all their wives will become unprotected, and there'll be unwanted children, and I'll be responsible. It'll be on me, and so he's projecting like the worst case scenario. He's forgetting about the fact that Krishna wants this done, that ultimately it will reinstate Yudhishthira on the throne, and that'll be good, you know. So he's confessing his inability to figure out the right thing to do on his own. And that is actually the first step in one's spiritual progress. Because the tendency on the material side is to be able, I know what's good for me, you know, I know what I want to do and how to do, you know. But no, we're in Maya. Maya gives us that illusion that we can figure it out with our material intelligence. But look what it's got us. We got a world that's about to, you know, become overheated, you know, by this climate change. Well, it's just a hoax. No, it's not a hoax. It's reality, and it's a result of, you know, worldwide obsession for sense gratification. So, not to become victimized by that, we need to turn our, you know, purify our intelligence so that it can direct the mind and senses in the proper direction. And that often will involve austerity, giving up some things that we really want to do or like to do, and taking on some things that we don't want to do. First, which is get up real early, you know, take a cold shower. Oh my God, cold shower. So, back to this verse. So, manoratena sati davato bahi. The mind is running out. Davata means running out externally on all these, you know, the vast things that Maya presents to us, one after another. So one has to. That is the character of someone who are non-devotees. They're the chariot of the mind. They're running on that, you know. So they don't have any good qualities. They may have some looking materially good qualities, but that just is illusion. It ultimately keeps them bound to birth and death, you know. So, but at the beginning it says that those who are real devotees, they have all good qualities, because the soul, don't forget, is part and parcel of Krishna. So when it becomes purified by bhakti, by the transcendental sound vibration, all the processes, then it becomes more and more Krishna-like, spiritualized, you know, good qualities. Krishna describes them very nicely in the 12th chapter. So those qualities are dormant within us. They're covered. So the purification process means they come out. They become manifest. Krishna empowers us. So Krishna is describing, you know, prajahati. Now it doesn't say jahati. It says prajahati. I mean, throws far away. What? All kaman, sarvan partha manogatan. All of these desires, lusty desires that arise from the mind. Manogatan means manogatan of mental concoction. They're right, you know, from the right. Atmaneva manatushta, satisfied atmani, in the pure state of the soul, by the purified mind. So atma can mean soul or mind here. So in other words, you become satisfied by Krishna consciousness. It's a kind of satisfaction that you never experienced before, certainly not in this body. And the first symptom of that is that you become less obsessed with sense gratification. It doesn't have the hold on you because you're turning back to Krishna. But remember that Maya is Krishna's servant. You know, she has the thankless task of trying to bewilder us and attract us to the material energy, because we wanted it. We wanted a life without Krishna. You know, this is our original sin, if you want. So that means turning away from Krishna. You know, in that verse I quote all the time, what's the origin of fear? Bhayam. This verse in the 11th canto. Vidya means the world of duality. This is good, this is bad for my senses, you know, let me go here, all the duality. Abhinaveshitaksyan, that absorption in the dualities of the material world is accompanied by us turning away from Krishna. Because if we're meditating on Krishna, absorbed in Krishna, we'll be above the dualities. We'll be transcendental. We'll be fixed. So that turning away is born of interest in the dualities, you know, trying to enjoy like Krishna. That's the idea. So mano, it says, it said, Isha, the Lord, Isha Rapetas, no, say, Vayam Duti Abhinavishnik said, Isha Rapetasya Viparhi, Apetasya, turning away from the Isha. And then everything becomes reversed. Instead of becoming a servant of Krishna, we become a competitor of Krishna. And you forget asmati, you're covered. Maya covers, you see. And that's why the next line says, tanmayato, it's being done by Maya. So you have to be Buddha. You have to use your intelligence. The next word is Buddha. What is an intelligent person do? Abhajetan, worships that same Lord that we turned away from eons ago. How do we know about him? Through the spiritual master and through the Shastra. And that's great importance. So Buddha abhajetam, how bhakti creation, with one-pointed devotion, not superficial, but really serious bhakti, guided by the Shastra, guided by the gurus. Bhakti creation, Isha, that Lord, same Lord, Isha. Bhakti creation, Guru Devatatma. Now this word Guru Devatatma can be understood in two different ways. That one sees the Lord as ultimately one's ultimate guide and guru, and that he sees the Lord manifest through his actual guru. That's why it says Sakshad Haritvena. We sing in the Guru Ashtaka every morning. Sakshad Haritvena, that he has the quality of Hari. We should worship him on the same level of Hari because he's a transparent medium for giving us Hari, giving us Krishna. You see, and that's why the next verse, the last verse, which is the most important. Therefore, because he's taking the role of Hari in our lives, giving us the same instruction and pointing us toward the service of Krishna, yasya prasadat bhagavad prasada. By getting the grace of the Guru, one will get the grace of the Lord, because he's a pure representative. He's standing in for Krishna. So that's and now Krishna is describing the symptoms of someone who is in this position of being a sincere devotee. First thing, Prajahati yada kaman sarvan Pārtha manogatan. He throws away all of these varieties of lusty desires which arise from the mind. And he's situated in the self, the real nature of the self, which is devotion to Krishna. Tushta, satisfied and happy. Stita pragyasta dochite. This is a symptom of one who is transcendentally situated. Stita pragya. That was Arjun's question. Stita pragya, he starts the previous verse. Stita pragya sakhabhasa. Because, in the previous verse, Krishna said, Stuti vipadhune yada stasati nishchala samadhavajala buddhisya tatam tada yogam avasasi. So that boils down to Stita pragya, which means one who is situated in fixed Krishna consciousness. What does he say? What is his language? How can I recognize him? Someone who is in samadhi, who is fixed in his mind on you. Stita di, in other words, this word stita comes up again and it means fixed, unmovable. What does he say? What does he and how does he sit? What does he do? So he's going to describe a devotee now. All right, if there's any questions on this verse, it's going to be expanded upon by Krishna in the next verse. Text 56. Dukkeshvanu vignamana Sukeshu vigataspaha Svitaraga bhaya krodha Chitadhi manuruchite. So this is describing the Stita Di Muni. There's actually a devotee in Alacha. I think he was there for many years named Stita Di Muni. That was his birth. I think he's a disciple of one of Prabhupada's disciples. One who is not disturbed in mind, even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness, and who is free from attachment, fear, and anger, is called the sage of steady mind. Purport. The word muni means one who can agitate his mind in various ways for mental speculation without coming to a factual conclusion. It is said that every muni has a different angle of vision, and unless a muni differs from another muni, he cannot be called a muni in the strict sense of the term. Nasa vashir yasa matam nabindam. Mahabharata Vanaparva 3:13-117. But a Stita Dhir Muni, as mentioned herein by the Lord, is different from an ordinary Muni. The Stita Dhir Muni is always in Krishna consciousness, for he has exhausted all his business of creative speculation. D means intelligence and Stita means fixed. He is called Prashanta Nikshesa Manodatantara. This is Stotra Ratna. Or one who has surpassed the stage of mental speculations and has come to the conclusion that Lord Sri Krishna or Vasudeva is everything. Here is in the Monoratha again. This is the chariot of the mind. You see that? Vasudeva Sarvamiti Mahatma Sudurlabha. That's in the 7th chapter, 19th verse. He is called a Muni, fixed in mind. Such a fully Krishna conscious person is not at all disturbed by the onslaughts of the threefold miseries, for he accepts all miseries as the mercy of the Lord, thinking himself only worthy of more trouble due to his past misdeeds. And he sees that his miseries, by the grace of the Lord, are minimized to the lowest. Similarly, when he is happy, he gives credit to the Lord, thinking himself unworthy of the happiness. He realizes that it is due only to the Lord's grace that he is in such a comfortable condition and able to render better service to the Lord. And for the service of the Lord, he is always daring and active and is not influenced by attachment or aversion. Attachment means accepting things for one's own sense gratification. And then he says, detachment is the absence of such sensual attachment. But detachment is good. We want a detachment. So I think Prabhupada really means aversion here, because he just refers to attachment and aversion. Really aversion is the opposite of such sensual attachment, isn't it? Aversion means all kinds of things you don't want to get involved with because yes, and aversion means something we hate. It's not that we don't want it. Not wanting it is something good. Detachment. We want Bhatsvaragya. Anyway, I think I fixed that. That became aversion. But one fixed in Krishna consciousness has neither attachment nor aversion, because his life is dedicated in the service of the Lord. Consequently, he is not at all angry even when his attempts are unsuccessful. Success or no success, a Krishna conscious person is always steady in his determination. So this is not an easy state to come to. One who is not disturbed in mind even amidst the threefold miseries, or elated when there is happiness. Well, being elated when there is happiness, that's possible and more possible, but not to be disturbed in the threefold miseries, that can be pretty tough. If an earthquake starts right now, we're going to say, that's so good, let's just continue the class. You can imagine? Let's get out of here. But we find, Prabhupada was a great example of that. He comes to, the trip, to America was so disturbing. You can imagine, But he recorded in his diary, what was going on, his journal, and he came to the point of just praying to Krishna, please, save me. He thought that if there was another earthquake, another heart attack, he would pass away. So Krishna assured him, don't worry, I'm taking over the boat now, so it's going to get smooth. So that happened many times. I was just reading about one of the most dramatic, you should read this book, everyone should read this book by Guru Raj, I Shall Build You a Temple, the story of the Bombay temple, how that came to be manifest. Prabhupada saw this land on one of his walks, because they had a smaller temple, and he said, this is the land we should get, you see. In Juhu Beach. And the devotees wondering, because Juhu at that time was a little bit remote from downtown Bombay. It was kind of, I don't know, like La Jolla or something. But and then they moved the deities there. They had the deities, and they had this makeshift temple, because it's a custom in India. Once the deity is in a temple, then you can't move the deity. But they were dealing with a guy who was an out-and-out demon. He had apparently sold this land and then stole it back several times already. Yeah, he was a big newspaper man. He had a lot of connections and everything. But Mr. Nair. So I happened to see that. I think it was 75. Yeah, maybe in my trip to India in 75. They had the land already, and they had installed the deities in a very makeshift temple, but the deities were there. And I was told, I think when I visited it, that the police had come and tried to shut down that temple. There was this one lady who was famous. She was trying to stop the police, and they dragged her away from her hair with her hair, and everything. And it was brutal, because he had influence in the government. This guy, he's a real demon. But they were able to mobilize, some of the men in the community to defend the temple, and they were able to stop that. So it was quite a struggle, and a lot of the devotees would think, why should we have to worry about this piece of land? We could get some other piece of land. And even, without Prabhupada's knowledge, they negated the contract, and they were ready to give the land back to this guy there. But luckily, no money was exchanged. He would have had to give some money back. He didn't want to give the money back. He wanted to steal the money that we put into down payment and then get the land. So it went on like that, and finally, what happened is it was a meeting with Prabhupada, and Prabhupada saw, I just heard, an account, there's these wonderful remembrances with Siddhanta, who comes here, he lives, I think, in San Diego, and he interviewed so many devotees, some of whom have passed away already, for their remembrances of Prabhupada. So this was Shruti Kirti, who was right in the middle of it, one of his servants. And this famous story, I think he's the one who related it, how Prabhupada met with this guy there, Then there was some negotiation. And when he stood up, he was limping heavily, And Prabhupada said, oh, it looks like Krishna's going to take him. He's going to finish him. And he did. He died, a heart attack. And his wife freaked out, she wanted to settle, because she thought, oh, this is, he's really got Krishna behind him. Maybe he's a little more pious. So he was able to secure the land, and they built a wonderful temple there, and it's become a real, very important source of Krishna consciousness for the whole area, the whole Bombay area. And other temples in Bombay have also manifested, especially the one in, what's the one that Radhanath Swami runs? What is it? No, the Juhu is the one that that was the first one. That's the one that probably Juhu Beach. Chowpatty. Yeah, thank you, Prabhu. Chowpatty. Yeah, I was fortunate to visit that temple. That was some of you may have seen my little chanting of Shikshastika in Mayapur. It's famous. Before I went there, we stopped in Bombay. And this was my first and only visit to Chowpatty, and it was coming up on Nityananda's appearance day, and this was in my main poetry writing phase, So maybe I can put, because I knew the Nityananda Ashtaka, so I said, oh, maybe I can put that into poetry, and I did, and I asked Maharaj if I could recite it on the day. He said, sure, So it was very. I have a recording of it. I also have a picture of me there doing it. So anyway. So after that temple in Juhu was established, then several other temples were also manifested. There's that one, and there's also one in Mira Road, which is nice. I have some friends who lived there. They moved here so that he could study computer science. I forget what college, And they were a family. They had a little daughter and some Hita. And she would come to the class, and then eventually they were both coming to the class, this class here. So when I went, and then they moved back to Bombay, and they have the Mira Road Temple right nearby. So when I visited there the last time I was in India, I was near Bombay, so I spent about a week with them. And I did a little series of classes at that Mira Road Temple, which is very nice. And you know the name of the deities? Radha Giridhari. Yeah. Anyway, so I'm not sure I get off on that, but yeah. So this idea of the mind generating so many ideas for sense gratification, and Mano-Rata, the chariot of the mind. And what is that? Oh, so this is a prayer that Prabhupada would quote from the Stotra Ratnam, which I think is Yamunacharya's. Bhavantamevanuchadandadantarang Gadahamevantu Bhavantamevanuchadandadantarang Gadahamekantika nityaking. No, that's the third line. Bhavantamevanuchadandadantarang Prashanta Nikshesa Manoratantarak. There's a Manorata again, you see? Prashanta Nikshesa Manoratantarak. Kadahamakantika nityakinkada Paharshi Yasyami Sanata Jivitam. You know this one? It's a real nice verse. So he's a prayer to the Lord. Bhavantam evanam nirantara. When will I be your committed servant, so that there's no break in my service? Nirantara, I will serve you without break. What will it be? Prashanta, and it will all be pacified. Prashanta nikshesa manoratantara. All of these endless nikshesa desires from the manoratantara, which are caused by the chariot of the mind, they'll be pacified. I'll be situated nicely in your service. Kadaham, when will this day come? Kadaham aikantika nitya kinkara. I will be your one-pointed, undeviating servant of yours. Kadaham aikantika nitya paharshi yasyami sanata jivitam. And I will live so joyfully in having you as my master, my eternal master. Prashanta nikshesa matanta kadaham aikantika tinkara paharshi yasyami. Harsha means very joyful. Paharsha means really jubilant, ecstatic. Paharshi yasyami sanata jivitam, living nicely just knowing you're my eternal master. It's a very nice prayer, Prabhupada would quote it often. So that's what's being described here as the Stita D Muni. This Stita D is coming up. Okay. Text 57. Yaksavatrana bisnehas. All right, let's try it again. Top of page 124, you got it? Bhushan, you there? Page 124. Okay. Yaksarvatrana bisnehas. Tat tat prapisubhasubham. Navinandatin handveshti. Tasya pragya pratishtita. So that phrase keeps coming up, the fixed intelligence, stita pratishtita. In the material world, one who is unaffected by whatever good or evil he may obtain, neither praising it nor despising it, is firmly fixed in perfect knowledge. One note on Prabhupada's use of English, the word evil. Now evil usually means, some nefarious, evil is a demon. But evil can also mean things which cause you suffering, pain. You see, that's another expanded meaning of the word evil. That's what's meant here. Purport. There is always some upheaval in the material world, which may be good or evil. One who is not agitated by such material upheavals, who is unaffected by good and evil, is to be understood to be fixed in Krishna consciousness. As long as one is in the material world, there is always the possibility of good and evil, because this world is full of duality. But one who is fixed in Krishna consciousness is not affected by good and evil, because he is simply concerned with Krishna, who is all good absolute. Such consciousness in Krishna situates one in a perfect transcendental position called, technically, samadhi. So here's kind of a festival of having to understand how evil means not just, someone is trying to hurt you, but really things that cause suffering. The threefold miseries are evil in that sense. You look up the word, it has that expanded meaning in English. So that's what's going on here. Sarvatra anabhisneha. No more affection. Now it's interesting. This word affection has two meanings. Of course, it has the meaning that I have affection for you. I like you or something, or I like something. But affection can also mean the quality of being affected by something. So, you see, it's a whole different meaning. Pure devotee, he's in the material, but the threefold miseries. How can I put it? Have no. He is in a state of being free of affection by the threefold miseries. It's an odd way of using it, but you have to read Prabhupada books like you have to understand that a lot of its usages, they come from the Oxford English Dictionary. And so the word purpose, did you know the word purpose can also be purport? Did you know that? I didn't either, till I started reading the introduction to the Ishopanishad. If you have an old version of it, before I revised it in 1993, you'll see that the introduction begins. It's a lecture Prabhupada gave in London, and he's talking about the Vedas. The word Veda can mean various things. But in the end, the purpose is one. Veda means knowledge. And it's a purpose. The purpose is one. And I think someone reading that will say, oh, I guess I'll find out what that means eventually. No, all it means is the purport is finally one. The actual purport of Veda is knowledge. The meaning of the word Veda is knowledge. So you have to kind of be careful when you read Prabhupada's books and this, maybe I'll give you my online Oxford English Dictionary, you can see.
Can you really use affection that way? Like, can we look that up grammatically?
It can be used that way, but it's generally not used that way in modern American English. But you have to read Prabhupada books. Say, well, it's really, this is English as taught in India in the early 20th century. That's when Prabhupada learned English. So there's some things like that, and really it's responsible of the editors to smooth those things out. For instance, and I don't want to get too far afield on this, in the 7th chapter, as you may remember, Krishna starts describing all the different material elements: earth, water, fire, air, ether, mind, intelligence, false ego. These are my energies. They're my material energies. And as we interact with those things, we interact with the senses. And so therefore he says, well, here's how one way you can see me everywhere. Rasoham apsukonte aprabasmi shashisuri or pranabhaksava vedishu shabdake purushamnashu. And then next verse, punyo ganda prativyangsha. So he's describing, I am the taste of water, I am the light of the sun and the moon, I am the ability in man, all of these different things. And the next verse, I am the fragrance of the earth. Punyo ganda prativyangsha. But originally he said, I am the flavor of the earth. Flavor of the earth. Do we eat the earth? No. Flavor in Oxford English Dictionary can also mean fragrance. Yes. Now, I changed those all to flavor. I changed it all to fragrance because it's just confusing, So you have to watch out for that. Some of them, you'll still see those in the old versions of the books. Okay. Okay, one more of those. Now, this one is almost amusing. In what chapter is this? Oh yeah, when you read the Krishna book, there's this wonderful conversation Prabhupada has with Rukmini. You remember Rukmini? And he wants her to become angry at him, and have that kind of rasa, where she'll be annoyed with him. So he starts, she's fanning him and everything, and he says in the evening, really, I must say, you shouldn't have married me. You should have married Shishupal. Basically, he says, I'm not worthy of you. I'm just a simple coward boy, and he's a king and everything. And you have to understand, I don't really have any love for my queens. I just, so he's hoping that she's going to get angry at him and, argue with him and have that rasa. But instead, she faints. She drops the chamar and faints away, dead, Not dead, but so he realizes he made a mistake, and he manifests his other two arms, and he gathers one into, and then he's wiping her face and assuring her, I didn't really mean it like that, So eventually she says, well, all right, he wants to have some verbal retort. So she has a whole speech that she has, actually you're correct, and she has all these philosophical things. So in the midst of doing that, it basically says that any woman, who just accepts a bag with mustaches on it, as her husband, and, it means that she hasn't really, and here's the way it wasn't even in the Krishna book, she hasn't really tasted the flavor of your lotus feet. Anyone who read that, I know I did, said, well, okay, the queens, they're kissing his lotus feet, there's nothing wrong with that. But no, that probably didn't mean that. Tasted means relish, and flavor means fragrance. So you haven't relished the fragrance of your lotus feet. That's the way it is in the original. So you have to be careful. And if you have any questions, come to me. I've untangled a lot of these things. All right, one more verse. Where were we? We did 57, right? Yeah, we're on 58. Yada sanghadate chayam. Kormongani vasarvashaha Indriyanindriyartebhyas. Yeah, that line is just one word. Tasya pragya pratishtita. One who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects as a tortoise draws its limbs within its shell, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. Purport. The test of a yogi, devotee, or self-realized soul is that he is able to control the senses according to his plan. Most people, however, are servants of the senses and are thus directed by the dictation of the senses. That is the answer to the question as to how the yogi is situated. Remember, this is systematically answering those questions. How does he sit? How does he walk? How does he talk? So he's answered. That is, the senses are compared to venomous serpents. They want to act very loosely and without restriction. The yogi or the devotee must be very strong to control these senses, the serpents, like a snake charmer. He never allows them to act independently. There are many injunctions in the revealed scriptures. Some of them are do-nots, and some of them are do's. Unless one is able to follow the do's and the do-nots, restricting oneself from sense enjoyment, it is not possible to be firmly fixed in Krishna consciousness. The best example, set herein, is the tortoise. The tortoise can at any moment wind up its senses and exhibit them again at any time for particular purposes. Similarly, the senses of the Krishna conscious persons are used only for some particular purpose in the service of the Lord, and are withdrawn otherwise. Arjuna is being taught here to use his senses for the service of the Lord instead of for his own satisfaction. Keeping the senses always in the service of the Lord is the example set by the analogy of the tortoise who keeps the senses within when he's not using them for some other purpose. So, this is a favorite example, comes up quite often about this tortoise. Tortoise, as probably would call it. So you have, what do we have, right? We have the senses, we have the mind, we have the intelligence, and we have the soul. You know, this is surrounded by those elements. And at present, in the conditioned state, they're all kind of binding forces keeping the soul bound to this material world, because the senses are naturally, in material senses, we're given the material body because we don't want to we didn't want to use our spiritual senses in Krishna's service. So we're given the material body, and now we have these material senses. And they naturally become attracted to various sense objects. As we grow older, the childhood, things are thrown away, but we have new ones that come up, adolescence and everything, at every stage. And so, and this is one of the frustrations of material life, because as you grow older, or poorer, you can't enjoy things that you once enjoyed or that you really aspire to enjoy. And so that's part of the depression, the affection of the modes of nature on the living entity. He's affected by that. So just the opposite is the Sthita Muni, someone who's self-controlled, the devotee, who is taking his pleasure, and this is, because we're pleasure-seeking. Krishna is full of pleasure all the time, anandamaya abhyasat, and so we're part and parcel of Krishna, so we have that tendency. But if we don't reestablish ourselves in taking pleasure in serving Krishna and enjoying the spiritual pleasure, then we'll be bound by this fleeting material pleasure. And that is completely frustrating, because, this verse in the 5th chapter, text 22, Yahi sangsparsha bhoga dukkha yone evate, that this sense pleasure is the source of misery, because you can only enjoy it for a certain amount of time because the material senses are limited. And so there's the frustration that has an end. And then there's the whole process of, if you overdo it, then you're creating some disease or whatever, Plus, the worst misery is that it brings you back again to try to enjoy it. And if you're enjoying it in some sinful way, then you get thrown, really suffer. So it's a real, self-destroying position to just be in sense gratification. So there's this alternative, Krishna consciousness. And at first, it's difficult. You have to give up those things that you're maybe really attached to and do those things that are really in the realm of austerities. But Krishna consciousness is so wonderful that even near the beginning, you have the chanting and the dancing. Oh, yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's getting late. So we'll resume this on Monday. And we'll enjoy now some poetry. We can enjoy both about Krishna. So, let's see, what's a real enjoyable one? Well, what could be more enjoyable than this? Madhuram, Madhuram, Bapadasya Vibho, Madhuram, Madhuram, Vadanam, Madhuram, Madhugandhi Madhusmita Tadaho, Madhuram, 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 Madhuram. Now, what's wonderful about this is a verse, of course, composed by Bhavamangal Thakur, and you can see he's really experiencing this. How sweet is Krishna's form, but it's even like that. And we can begin to enjoy it by simply hearing and focusing on the meaning and a beautiful expression. So he says, sweet is my dear Lord's form, sweet is still his face, so fair, but his honey-scented gentle smile is sweet beyond compare. And there's one verse, I didn't put it into a poem, but it has the same idea, how you can within the verse itself, he describes the perfection of the verse. This is from Govinda Lilamrita. Describing Krishna coming back from the forest. The gopis are all, they're hankering for his, when is he coming, Mother Yashoda, they go on the top of the roof, oh look, there's all the dust, that must be the dust cloud, and I can hear the flute. So this anticipation. So now this is a description of that. Denu vrindam anamannamayantam, Venu Gītā mamatam visajantam, Renu rushitachalalakabantam, Kenu viksasamayor namudantam. It rhymes at the beginning and the end of each line. And he says, Denu, Venu, Renu, and Kenu. Okay, so what does it mean? Denu Vrindam. Denu Vrindam simply means herds of cows. His big herd of cows. So he's coming back with the herds of cows there. Anumandam, he's following very leisurely. And what is he doing? Of course, he's playing the flute, creating nectarious song. Venu Gītam Amritam Srijantam, the nectarian flute song. And what's happening? All these thousands of cows, they're up, they're kicking up all this dust, and it's going on his hair, beautiful curly hair that's swaying as he walks, beautifying it. Renu rushita chalalakabantam. Kenu, who indeed, seeing this sight, Kenu viksha samayur namudantam, will not enter into the state of the highest joy and bliss. So how can we see that? Well, we can't see it directly now with our material eyes, but just by chanting that, if you know the meaning, the image comes in your mind. It's a way of seeing. So I'll give you that verse if you like it. What I should do is put it into a poem. But it's already so poetic, Okay, we better join. All glory to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. I think we should start the class at 7 o'clock. Give me a little more time.